We're going to talk about guided meditations on the stages of the path. So this book has an interesting background because for many years I was leading retreats on the stages of the path, or in Tibetan it's called Lamrim. Sometimes it's translated as steps on the path or gradual path to enlightenment. So I was leading retreats, every year on the stages of the path. And we would do these retreats, there would be week-long retreats or 2 weeks. Once we did a 1-month retreat. And then afterwards, people would say, now what do I do when I go home? And it's like, well, you think what you're going to do when you go home is different than what you're doing when you're here? Why would they be different? And then I realized, people like the Lamrim meditations, but they don't know exactly how to do them on their own. Because when they're at retreat and somebody else is leading them, then they just get used to having somebody else lead them, and they don't pay attention and know how to do it on their own when they're at home. So then I decided, okay, to help people when they go home, I would make a series of recordings of me leading the various Lamrim meditations. So I did that. Peter Aronson recorded them, and it was an interesting recording session because at that time our kitty Manjushri was alive. And Manjushri loved to sit in my lap right when we were recording these meditations. So you would hear him purring in the background, or you would hear the plane. I lived over a flight, trail. You hear a plane going through. So we had a lot of repetition of these Lamrim meditations, recording them, because we had to redo so many of them. But it turned out into a nice set of meditations, which we put on the web. But then again, it was the same difficulty that I had with things that we printed in Singapore for free distribution, which was nobody even knew they existed because they weren't published anywhere. So then the idea came, well, let's make a book on the guided meditations, because I also had a written outline of how to do it. And let's put in information about, how do you set up an altar? How do you deal with distractions in your meditation? What else did I put in it? Antidotes to the afflictions, deepening your Dharma practice, how to establish a daily practice. It starts out with how to get out of bed in the morning. Mindfulness of breathing, and so on. Actually, somebody just wrote me an email recently asking me how they can get out of bed in the morning, because they always set the intention to do the 3-step motivation and so on, and they always wind up going back to sleep. So I told them that the best way that I've learned is to have a cat that wants to eat at the time that you get up. And it doesn't matter how many times you press snooze, your cat does not snooze and will insist that you get up and feed her. Right, Maitri? So this book got written for the purpose of helping people be able to set up a daily meditation practice. And so there's the book with all the written material, and then in the back of the book there's a CD which you can put in your computer or wherever you want to put it, and it has all the recordings. So you can listen and then press the pause button when you want to meditate on the steps. And then gradually you can start reading them, and if you prefer, or do that if you prefer reading the outlines. And then in that way you learn how to make your own outlines, so that when you read a Dharma book explaining a certain topic, you know how to pick out the important points and set up your own analytic meditation about what you read. and then your practice becomes really rich. So His Holiness Dalai Lama, when he wrote a kind foreword to this book, I should read exactly what he says. As I often tell people, the analytic meditations on the points of the Lamrim will transform our minds and enable us to become more compassionate and wise. I encourage people to do these meditations as part of their daily practice. Yeah. And so that was another reason for making this book, because it is important to do these meditations as part of our daily practice. And many times our Tibetan teachers teach us the material, but they don't teach us how to do the meditations. They assume that we know how to pick out the important points and how to do the meditation. But many people don't, and they've never thought of it. Also because in the West, people think of meditation as emptying your mind of all thoughts, whereas these meditations involve learning how to think correctly. Yeah, and so many of the Tibetan teachers don't kind of explain to us how to do these. I was very fortunate in that my two first teachers, Lama Thubten Nyashe and Zopa Rinpoche, actually led us in doing the Lamrim analytic meditations. And then they insisted that we learn how to lead other people in doing them. And they were very rare in this way, of actually leading their students in the meditation and then having us lead others. And I think it was incredibly helpful, because then we learned how to do it. And we also learned how to read and pick out the important points and structure another meditation based on, Dharma material that we're reading. Okay, so very helpful. This was something that was really unique to them that I appreciate.